First of all, I'd like to thank Austin for getting the memo that we were going to wear blue suits tonight. They're pretty close. But I thank you for being back here tonight to worship some more together collectively. I know I've been encouraged, and hopefully in this small portion I can encourage you in some way of what we've been talking about, which is this chapter in Galatians 5. If you weren't here this morning, to give you a little review of what we talked about, that we talked about how the fruit of the Spirit, and by walking in the Spirit in Galatians 5, that famous passage, has this purpose. And that purpose that Paul wrote it and to give it was to give a solution to a problem that was happening in Galatia, that was happening in Ephesians, that was happening in Philippians, happening everywhere, was that they were divided through circumcision. And they've been trying to keep the law and try to make this a big deal, and to forget that Jesus has done away with the old covenant, that we have the new, which is better, the Spirit, the law of Christ. And it was causing these divisions. And so this is what Paul's solution is. He says, well, walk in the Spirit. I say then, walk in the Spirit. If you walk in the Spirit, these works of the flesh won't matter anymore. There'll be no room for them because you're walking in the Spirit. So tonight what I want to do is I just want to talk about the actual problem. What was the problem? We got it in Galatians 5:15. If you remember there, I said 5:15 and 5:26 were almost the same verse. And 5:15 says, but if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you are consumed by one another. So if you bite and devour each other, what's going to happen? You're going to consume each other and there's going to be nothing left because you're basically eating each other up. Then I said 5:26 is similar. Let us not be conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. So it's as if Paul had left to talk about walking in the Spirit, and in verse 26 he comes back to his point that he had in verse 15, which is that y'all are destroying each other. And there's no need to be destroying each other because there's already so much going on that's going so good for you. Why would you even waste time doing this? I know you didn't get it from me. I know you didn't get it from Jesus. Someone must have made this up. So that's what we'll be looking at, is this idea of consuming each other, because this is something obviously that we don't want to do. We don't want to consume each other. And obviously, circumcision, and whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, is not as big of a deal as it was in their time. Yet we as humans still find ways. We still find ways to divide ourselves because we're humans and that's what we do. If you're looking at 5:15 with this in your mind, it's very similar to another famous verse. It's a verse that tells us that Satan wants to devour us. That's his mission. In my version, it says the word devour. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. This is what Satan does. He walks around like a roaring lion, seeing who he can eat up. Now, of course, what it says is that we need to be steadfast, we need to be sober, we need to be vigilant, because he's out there doing this. And at the end of 1 Peter, it has that competition here. You need to be awake, you need to be alert, because Satan's trying to devour you. Now, what Satan knows, and what the Spirit knows that tells us through the Word, is that we can do it a lot faster for him if we do it for him. And that was what we read in 5:15. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. That process of devouring can happen so much faster if he gets you on his team. If you're out somewhere and you're trying to divide groups up, local congregations up, you are doing Satan's work. And you're helping him out. And he's getting the job done even faster because of you. I'm sure Satan would tell you thank you for all the help that you've given him to devour God's people. What Satan has is this plan to divide and conquer. We see this all through the New Testament, and we see this in our lives today. And it's basically the Romans, if we know, actually coined the term divide and conquer. What the Romans would do is they want to take over these two cities. And they knew they maybe couldn't take both of the cities at the same time, so the plan was to divide and conquer. First, I pit the two cities against each other. Maybe I can use rumors, maybe I can use alliances to get these two cities to fight. I help one city devour the other, and then when that's over, I only got one city left, so I can come in and I can devour just that one city instead of having to deal with the two. But you get to keep the two, because one city has devoured the other. And the same plan is with Satan. Think about all the times in the New Testament that he uses factions and divisions to divide so that he can come in and conquer. One of the first epistles in the Bible, in the New Testament, Corinthians, what does he do? He splits them up into factions by tempting them to do this. Hey, you know what you should do? You should probably split yourselves up by who baptized you. That would work. Ever since Acts 10, he's been using circumcision. Well, who's circumcised, who's not, who's a Jew and who's a Gentile? That way I can divide, and then once they devour each other, I come and conquer who's left. And it's a great plan from a strategic point, and he's done a lot of really evil work by using this plan. And Paul's trying to warn you here in Galatians, how are you going? What's the solution to this? Well, it's walk in the Spirit, isn't it? Now, those two things maybe aren't things that divide us today. I don't think anyone really has, well, I'm sure there's somebody, but nobody really has the gall to try to divide themselves up by who baptized them. I've never met a Christian that actually was maybe proud of that because they know this verse. They're never going to say something like that. But of course, there's somebody that might will. And I know that Jews and Gentiles is not that big of a faction anymore in you have with local works, because nobody really knows if they're a Jew or not. No one can trace their lineage back to Abraham anymore. That's not going to be a problem. For the most part, we all know we're all Gentiles. We all are. So that's not really a problem. But because we're humans, because Satan is crafty, there's other ways he can divide us. There's many, many other ways that he can divide us. To say, I belong to this group, you belong to this group, you belong to this group, and we create this wall of separation between all of us. Now, in the Bible, we see that what he's going to do, once he can't do these things anymore maybe, is he's going to start using culture. And he's going to start using race and where you're from and what do you look like to divide. And this is what he does in churches today, too. And let's turn to Colossians 3. Colossians 3:8. At the end of Galatians, there's the same passage, but it's just a little different. But in Colossians 3, Paul makes this point of all the different types of people that you would assemble with. And he uses this. If you look in verse 8 of chapter 3, this is talking about the new man, putting it on from the old man. It's really similar to what we were talking about in Galatians 5. Verse 8, but now you yourselves are put off all these, anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all and in all. Period. Again, solves the problem. That there's all these things that you could be, all these things that Satan would love to divide you up for, all that people would make up and try to create these divisions, but doesn't even matter anymore because Christ is all and in all. You can picture yourself as someone in Colossae. And the reason why I want to go through this is I want us to realize how easy we have it. When it comes to divisions, when it comes to differences of culture, differences between you and me, there's really not that many. Being that we all live in the South and we all live in this area of Birmingham, there's really nothing compared to the amount of culture and differences that you would have found in Colossae and that you would have found in Galatia. And what Christ did was hold them all together. So if he can hold all them together, he can hold us all together. But what you did is you be Philemon maybe. And you're at the church of Colossae, which meets in your house, and you're Philemon, and you're greeting people in the door. And y'all have all come to assemble together, maybe to study together, maybe to worship together, maybe to take the Lord's Supper together. So they're all coming into your house. You imagine the different amount of people that you would invite. It would be a Jew. You say hey to the Jew. The Jew obviously knows a lot about the Word of God. He's done this thing his whole life. Maybe he's a good teacher, but also maybe he's someone that's trying to cause divisions. Or maybe just because of his stereotype, you believe that, hey, maybe this person would try to cause divisions because they're a Jew. Then you'd have a Greek. A Greek could be the second person. A Greek would probably be someone that was living maybe a good life there in Colossae. They would have a different type of culture, different types of traditions, yet they're coming to your house too. You'd have slaves. Slaves would be coming into your house to assemble. And if you're Philemon, you have Onesimus, who's maybe your own slave who's coming into the house to come and worship to you. Worship for you, worship with you. Not worship to you. Worship with you. But even that's strange. That nowhere else in any type of Roman culture would a slave do anything with a free man like that. But this is different. And you would have slaves that would come in and be part of the brotherhood with you, assemble with you. You'd have free men like yourself. Maybe this would be the people that you'd be most like. But this is a free man coming here that has decided he wants to assemble with the slaves and with the Greeks and with the Jews. There's two more that Colossians here brings out that maybe we don't know. Barbarians and Scythians would be coming in to come and worship with you. Some people take this barbarian just mean the way we use it today, which is just someone uncivilized. I had this big turkey leg and I'm chewing down and Mom goes, Andrew, you're eating like a barbarian. And that's the way we use the term sometimes. And maybe that's what Paul means. But all other Roman sources, when they're talking about barbarians, they're talking about a certain type of people. A certain type of people that the Romans absolutely hated and is actually going to be the downfall of the Romans. I'm going to put a map up here. Maybe. Yeah, there it is. Hopefully you can see it. I always get excited when there's a map up on the screen. That may just be me, but hopefully you're a little bit excited too. But what you would have here is that this would be the extent of the Roman Empire in 100 AD, roughly around the time that Paul would have been alive and that the first century church would have been at least ending up at the end of the first century church. Who the barbarians would be, and who, if you were talking about a barbarian, would be everybody that's north of here. It'd be North Europeans. And what the Romans did is they would down there, they're trying to hold Italy the best they can, and all these different people are attacking. The Gauls would be attacking them, trying to take over territory. The Visigoths would be attacking, and even the Celts later on. That all these northern Europeans would be maliciously attacking the Romans. And the Romans basically come up with the word barbarians to make fun of northern Europeans because of the word barbarians, because they said they barble. They go bar, and barbarian. And that was the idea that they came up with to come up with this word. The other reason why they call them barbarians is because of this really cruel stereotype, which is that they're always drunk. They're always drunk. Greeks and Romans mixed their wine with water. That way to purify the water. But they said that barbarians, Northern Europeans, they didn't do that. They just drank the straight alcohol. So they were always drunk and they were always murmuring. They're barbarians. If you were Philemon, how would you know that this person that has come to assemble with you, if you don't know them, maybe they're a visitor, how would you know that they were probably a barbarian? They would have been white. White people. And when Paul says this, when he's talking about barbarians, I firmly believe that's what he means. That you're not slave, you're not free men, you're not Jews, you're not Greeks, you're not white. Because if you were a Northern European, that's who you would have been. And you were looked down upon in society because you were savages. You didn't fit into the Roman Empire. You were the people that maliciously attacked the people on the outskirts of the Roman Empire. But these were the people that would come and worship with you in Philemon's house. And then the Scythians again. And actually, I don't really know that much about the Scythians, and I couldn't find a lot of sources about the Scythians. Some people say that they were Russian. Some people say that they were Chinese. Some people say that they were nomads that lived in here in Iran. We do know one thing about them, at least for sure, is that they were shepherds. That they were nomadic people. And I'm very positive of that. So you have Philemon, the Greek comes in, the Jew comes in, people that are used to Roman Empire life, and then here comes a guy hauling all his sheep behind him. Great. How would you know who the Scythian was? I think by his smell. That's who you know who the Scythian is. Yet all these people are coming together to assemble together to be part of the church at Colossae. And I've said it before, I already said it already. There's nothing else like this. There's nothing else in the world that brings 6 different types of people like this together except for Jesus Christ. It's never happened before. And if you were a stranger and you walked by and you saw Philemon's window, what would you think? Why are all these people together like this? Let me throw one more curveball into this situation. Most of these people that you're assembling together, you can't speak their language. So maybe you're sitting together and you're worshiping with them. And of course you have people with spiritual gifts that can interpret so there can be teaching about Jesus. How do you greet them? How do you say hello? How do you make sure that you're truly loving and taking care of your brother and sister's needs? All I would do is just to smile. Right? I wouldn't know what to do. This is how diverse the first century church was. This is how diverse it was. But what is Paul's thing here at the end? But Christ is all and in all. So even with that situation, when you have so much diversity, that church can still be strong. That church can still be unified because Christ is all and in all. And we talked about that this morning. How is Christ in all? Well, that was Galatians 5:24 or Galatians 2:20. You've been crucified with him. that all these people here together have been crucified with Christ. They've all come through the same cross to be reconciled with God. And that holds a group together. What holds a group together? The leader holds the group together. Because that's the only thing all those people had in common. Now you think about the diversity there and think about the diversity here. I think we do have diversity to a degree, but nothing like that. Think about any type of group like that. Why is it that we can't hold it together? And the times that we do devour each other, why does that happen? If Colossae could do it and Galatia could do it, we can't. We have the same leader. So it really is a challenge there. I don't want to be like some group that can't keep it together, that consumes each other, because I have Christ who could hold Colossae together, who could hold Galatia together, who is in all. We should be able to do this. And that's what I kind of take from Colossians. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to Galatians and go through the verse that we talked about at the end. We already read 5:15. Now this is 5:26. This is like the 8th time we've read this passage. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. And that is the simple application to verse 25. If we live in the Spirit, we have to walk by the Spirit. So let us not do these things. And I just broke these up. Let us not become conceited. And I said this morning what conceited means. It's excessive proud. That you're excessively proud of yourself. You think very highly of yourself. If you're the type of person that thinks very highly of yourself, it's very hard for anyone around you to meet up to your standards. So what it is you end up becoming alone, and you end up creating division of yourself because you're conceited. And this is what happens when people don't walk in the Spirit. This is what happens when people don't realize that Christ is all and in all. They become conceited in this way. And of course, we could talk about all these different ways that we could divide ourselves, whether by culture, by what we look like, whatever it may be. And of course, these things do happen in real life. But I think there's one division that we don't address, but it's probably the most neglected. And it probably happens the most amount of times. Is we create a division and we outcast and we neglect in our body people who we think are weird. People who we just maybe aren't interested in that much. People that we just maybe not think are cool or up to our standards. People that we wouldn't want to spend our time with. People that just say weird things. Now, of course, if anyone's not conceited, they realize that all of us have this little bit of weirdness in us. There's all something about us that we have our quirks, and we have little weird things about us. But I'm talking about somebody that just in normal life, if you weren't a Christian, this is somebody you would never spend time with because they were just weird. Maybe they don't look good. Maybe whatever it is. Those are the people that end up being neglected. But is not Christ in all? Isn't he in someone that we may even just seem to ourselves as weird? Is this the type of person, are we so conceited that when if they come to sit by us, whether we're worshiping together or whether we're eating together, that we don't want the people around us, our friends, to see us sitting with this person? And we get up and we move ourselves. And who did that? Peter did that. Not because someone was weird, because they were Gentiles. But it's another division that Satan has used over and over again, and it preys on us being conceited. And this is why we can't be conceited. Let us not provoke one another. That's the second thing he says. And again, I know it says let us not provoking one another, but I try to stick with the text, but I know that the tense here is wrong. I mean, we don't usually say that in normal life. Let us not provoking one another. We usually don't say that. Something that's really great about the body is we know each other really, really well. And we know how to push each other's buttons. We know how to manipulate each other. For a long time, I thought I could manipulate Mr. Rusty. I thought I could. And I remember being 16, and I remember being in like camp and stuff when we'd have a Bible class. And I remember sitting there and maybe looking at Johnny and saying, I'm going to push all his buttons today. I'm going to push every single one. And we think we can manipulate people like that. Maybe I can keep them, get them talking, and we can never get to the main point, those sort of things. And I actually know the truth is that Mr. Rusty was manipulating me all those times because he knew my buttons probably better. But this is how the relationship we have, and of course, it can be a humorous thing, and we can use it to poke fun of each other and that sort of thing, but we can also use it for flat-out evil. Because I know what buttons to press, what things to say, maybe passive-aggressively, to make you have an outburst, to make you sin. So that when you do have an outburst of wrath, when I have finally torn you down, I can make a fool of you. I can tell you, look what that person did. And what it is look what I provoked this person to do. That causes a division that you don't need to do. Why would you want to provoke somebody like that to do evil? And we shouldn't. The third thing he has here is envying one another. Envying one another. Basically despising somebody because they have something that you want. Maybe they're getting attention that you want in your group. Maybe they have even a spouse that you may have wanted. Maybe they just have a financial situation that you want. Whatever it is, even though you may desire that thing, whatever it is, you despise them for it. And I can picture myself being a barbarian and despising a Greek. I wish I looked like him. I wish I did things like him. I wish I could talk like him. That's envy. And that causes another problem here. If you wanted to sum these three things up, I promise I am not crying. I have sweat in my eye. And I'm trying so hard to wipe it off and trying to be, very nonchalant about it. But it is awful. I'm going to go to Target after this and I'm going to invest in a sweatband. I'm going to put it around my head. People look at here and go, man, that guy's weird. Looks like he's up there playing tennis. If you wanted to sum these three things up, what would you say? Well, how did we sum up the works of the flesh? We summed it up with one word: selfishness. All three of these things revolve around selfishness. So, what's the solution to all these things? Walking in the Spirit. Bearing the fruit of the Spirit is the solution to all these things. You do that, you have no room for this. You don't want even to be a part of this. That's why I preached this sermon this morning. So I could make this point and I could say that, and it would sink in with everyone. I wouldn't have to explain it anymore. But the solution to this is walking in the Spirit. And that's what he gives in Galatians. Now, I want to give you is another solution that goes right along with that. Instead, when you're in that situation, when you want to envy somebody, when you want to provoke somebody and press their buttons and try to create them to sin or do something wrong to make a fool of them, if you're conceited, instead you can remember him. You can remember Jesus Christ. Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2, here verse 14. For he himself is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall of separation, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is, the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, and that he might reconcile them both to God in one body through the cross, thereby putting to death the enmity. And he came and he preached peace to you who are far off and to those who are near, for through him we both have access by one Spirit to the Father. And just to break up the first verse to make these points. Instead, I can remember him because he himself is our peace. There's no reason for me to be conceited. There's no reason for me to want to bite and devour because I'm at peace. I'm at peace because I know who my God is. I know he keeps his promises. I know he's going to take care of me. There's no need for me to attack. There's especially no need for me to attack my brethren because he is my peace. He has reconciled me from God and who has made both one. That's what he's done. He has made us both one body, in the sense of the church body. I think if you keep on reading, he's made us both one temple. That we are this temple that grows into the household of God. Look at verse 19, picking up. Now therefore you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and the members of the household of God, having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom the whole building, being fitted together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also were being built together for a dwelling place of God in the Spirit. So what he has done is he has made us one. There's no reason for me to want to harm someone else of whom I'm one with. Why would you want to slap another part of your body? Why would you want to harm? Because all you would be doing is harming yourself, because you are in the one body of Christ. I've been waiting all year to do this, but I'm finally going to give the building illustration, because we've been working on this building behind me, and I always knew it was coming. That one day I was going to read this passage, and I was going to get to give the building illustration. And of course, the building is not the church, but it's the good example here that's used in Ephesians 2. So what it is that the building is going to be fitted together on top of the foundations that the apostles and prophets gave, which is given through the Spirit, Jesus Christ being the cornerstone, and all these pieces are going to be fitted together to be the building, to grow into the holy temple to God. Now what happens if you have like the building that we used to have, it starts working against each other. And you have a roof that's like this, right? And the roof's so bad that it starts pushing the walls out. We're sitting there in Bible class back there, and one part of the ceiling is higher than the other. I feel like the whole house is leaning. What happens to a church body when they start fighting against each other? You end up shaking the whole group. You shake the whole house. And you're not truly one anymore because you're trying to be one, but not be one at the same time. And what does it do? It goes back to selfishness. It harms everybody else around you. It harms everybody else around you. And I talk to people that have been in splits, church splits. I've talked to people who've been in divisions and factions when they had problems like this. And it seems to me that the people that always get hurt the worst are the people that weren't involved in it. They're the ones that had to suffer because one party was trying to create divisions, because one party was trying to do Satan's work. And it's awful that it's that way. But thankfully, Christ has made us both one. If we understand that we walk in the Spirit, this doesn't have to be a problem at all. And my favorite one is the last third one that he says there in that first verse, that he has broken down the middle wall of separation. That this would have been the middle wall that's in the temple that separates the Gentiles from the Jews. I put up here this one of these signs, and they're called sophigs, I believe. And it's just archaeological evidence that they found several of the signs that would have been on that wall. So you're in the temple, and if you're a Gentile, you can only go so far into the temple before you hit one of these signs. And one of these signs behind me, I wrote it down. I didn't translate it, but I got off the internet of what it says. Now, no outsider shall enter the protective enclosure around the sanctuary, and whoever is caught will only have himself to blame for the ensuing death. So, no outsider can enter in here, and if you do, you're going to be put to death, and you can only blame yourself. That was the point being made. It was very strict and very hard. If you're a Gentile, you are not coming on past this point. This is only for the Jews. You need to stay out there. So what does Paul say that Jesus did? He broke down the middle wall. He destroyed it. He leveled it. There's no middle wall anymore. Now, what we like to do as humans is we like to try to rebuild the middle wall. And this is what the Jews were doing, and this is what they did in other things as well. This is what we do today. All right, I'm going to try to create something to separate me from you. Maybe so I don't have to spend time with you. Maybe so I don't have to take care of you. Maybe so that I don't have to show you love or peace or long-suffering or joy. I don't have to show you those things like the fruit of the Spirit because I built this middle wall. But you've forgotten that the middle wall is gone. It's broken. It's completely gone. There's no signs anymore. It's over. Something that's always helped me. Because I get aggravated. I get upset with people. Because I'm human. I do. And I've been upset and aggravated with my own brothers and sisters. And I've been in times in my past when there's somebody that comes in that I seriously just do not want to have to deal with. Maybe people I think I'm weird. Maybe I'm just being conceited and all these things that I can fall prey to. I have fallen prey to. What I think is that whatever this wall is that I've created, whatever this wall that society has created to separate us, Jesus has broken it down. Jesus is really good at breaking down walls. And this is what he's done. So I have to force myself to treat that person like a brother should treat another brother. Or how a sister should treat another sister. With the love that comes through the fruit of the Spirit. With the joy, with the peace, with the long-suffering, if that's what it takes. With peace, with gentleness, with self-control. I have to exhibit those fruits because the middle wall is gone. So don't be trying to create middle walls because Jesus is just going to knock it down again. If we walk in the Spirit, there will be no middle walls. because we understand what he's done for us. We're so thankful that we get to be a part of something that is not anywhere else in the world. A brotherhood that's made of everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who your father was. All it matters is if you've been reconciled to God tonight. If you've gone through the same cross that we've all gone through so that we can be reconciled to God. And I feel like that is the main point of Galatians that I've gotten from Ephesians. But that is the main point of Galatians. And that's what chapter 5 is all about. As always, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you laughing at me as I'm over here trying to deal with my eye. And of course, I appreciate each and every one of you. And of course, I know that Satan has tried to get this group before. I know that Satan's going to try to get this group again, because this is what he's been doing for years and years and years. But if we walk in the Spirit, he's just going to have to turn around and leave, because there's going to be no walls for him to put up. And that's going to be something to be very thankful for that he has done for us. If you're here tonight and you need the prayers of the congregation, or maybe you feel like you need to know more about what the Spirit says, we can study with you. Or if you'd like to come to Christ and be reconciled through the cross tonight, we'd love to assist you with that if you'll please come forward.